when God writes the birth plan. Mary's sovereign birth stories, a precipitous car birth, and 2 beautiful home births. Hi friends, welcome to the Birth and Rebirth Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany, and in this week's episode, I invite Mary onto the podcast to share her incredible birth stories with us. I stumbled upon a clip of her most recent birth, and I was just in awe. I was moved by how raw and undisturbed these moments were right after her baby was born, and just how embodied she was in her God-given power. And when I read the comments that she had birth witnesses, birth attendants present at her birth, I was even more impressed that no one stepped in to disturb the sacred moments immediately after her baby was born. Because in this birth, time stood still for about 30 seconds, and Mary didn't immediately pick her baby up, and there was just so much trust in birth and in the present moment that I just found to be so beautiful, because most people would have freaked out and most people would have intervened and disturbed this sacred moment. But the truth is that Mary knew her baby was okay, and they were both just transitioning back into this world after a wild birth journey. And I just love hearing Mary's birth story so much, because it's proof that when you surrender to God's design of birth, incredible things happen. And also that God just writes the best birth plans for us. Mary says that she never would have imagined giving birth outside of the hospital. Yet she didn't have one of her babies in the hospital. She tells us about her first birth, which was precipitous and happened in the car, and her 2 beautiful home birth stories that I know you guys are going to enjoy so much.
So my name is Mary, and I just recently had my 3rd child, married to my husband, father of the 3 kids. My 3rd child was a home birth. I think that's probably how we connected, was via the 3rd child's birth. I came to this, I guess, if you will, this journey because, interestingly, I never would have thought I would have had a home birth when I started my pregnancy, my first pregnancy.
Yeah.
I always knew that I wanted to have an unmedicated birth. I knew that since I was a kid, like before I got married. I knew I want to experience all of this glory that God has, provided us with this ability. So I knew that from being a child.
Wow.
I know people thought, she's crazy, she'll change her mind. And then I got pregnant with my first, and I thought, I'm going to have an unmedicated birth at the hospital, because I didn't know about birthing centers or home births or any of that. And I'm setting up my birth plan like they recommend, writing it out. I'm thinking I'm going to show up to the hospital and I'm going to hand them my birth plan, and they're going to like bow down and say, that's great. We respect your autonomy. And so I wasn't even going to tour the hospital. And something I can only, guess or think that it was the Holy Spirit said, listen, honey, you need to go tour the hospital. So reluctantly, I think I was about 35 weeks pregnant. I don't know how to talk. Okay, so at about 35 weeks, I toured the hospital and I had the perfect nurse for what needed to happen because she was so yucky. And I'm asking her questions. I'm telling her I've got my own hospital gown. I've purchased one that meets the criteria. It opens in the back, it opens in the front, it opens every which way, but it's not your hospital issued gown. She's like, oh no, you can't wear that. Okay. And we're going along. And I ask her, so can we adjust the lighting here? What about the temperature? What about an IV? Why do I need an IV? She's like, because you need an IV if something happens. And I thought, well, if something happens. Meanwhile, my husband's there, so I'm giving him the side eye. Like, this ain't
gonna work.
This ain't gonna work. This ain't gonna work. And then it got to the point where what solidified this isn't gonna work for me was we got to the talk of the epidural. And I said, what about, and I'm not the only person there. There's like three or four couples. I said, what about if you don't want an epidural? Like, I'm not planning on having an epidural. And she says, honey, you're going to be begging for an epidural. And I looked at my husband and I was like, oh no,
my goodness.
We are not. This is like, that was it. That was the conversation. We are not having birth here. Because if these people are going to be in the middle of already a, stressful, I don't want to say painful, because I don't think that birth, my experience wasn't that it was painful, but it's, you're
intense.
sensitive to, it's intense, right? I'm like, what's the word? It's intense. You don't need people ragging you and telling you, you need this and that. And so we went home and I went into the internet and looked for options and found a birthing center. And we had our first actually in the parking lot of the birthing center, because when I was calling the midwife on call and saying, hey, my surges are 311, and she says, there's no way your surges are 311. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, what time do you feel that you went into labor? I said, about 6 p.m. I woke up from a nap and I could feel this pressure in my lower, in my lower abdomen area. And she said, there's no way. I think it was about 8 p.m. at that time. She says, there's no way you're 311. Yes way. And she says, I didn't learn till later that she was actually waiting on the phone until my next surge to see if I could talk through the surge. So she says to me, let me know when your next surge comes. And I say, okay, next surge comes. I said, I'm in the middle of a surge. And I felt like I had to fake the intensity level because she was like, you're talking to me. You can't be a first-time mom talking to me through surges. So thanks to her, we left super late. I had already completed transition at my house. My water had broken. I had the poop feeling where, baby's engaged and about to start. And then we had to drive 50 minutes to the birthing center.
50 minutes?
50 minutes to the birthing center.
No.
So the entire ride in the car, I'm stressed because I'm like, she's coming out. Like, she's going to come out. I don't want to have this baby in the car and then drive with the newborn. In retrospect, that's what I should have done. I should have had the baby in the car, should have pulled over, had the baby in the car, and just drove like slowly the remainder of the way. We beat this midwife there. My husband's driving. My dad and my mom are in the back seat because my mom had come for like labor assist, and my dad and my husband delivered the baby while I'm in the passenger seat.
Oh my goodness. And that's incredible. First of all, I love that it was your husband and your dad. That's that's so common for first-time moms to be like belittled and told that they don't know what's going on with their own body.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So we pulled around back because they said, for deliveries after hours, pull around back and we'll let you. And the lights are off. And so I knew, I'm like, I had already crowned on the way to the birthing center. Like 10 minutes out, I'm like, I'm crowning. And my husband's like, she's crowning. Like, oh my God. So as soon as we got there and I saw she wasn't there, I pulled my sweatpant leg down. I put my leg up on the dashboard and I was going to deliver her by myself. And then, I guess my mom sent my dad in because my dad's in the medical field. So he, in his early years, delivered some babies. So my mom sends him in, and my dad and my husband are like, my dad goes to recline the seat. I'm like, no. Like, I was in my zone. I was like, don't recline the seat. I'm perfectly fine right here. Like, one push, baby's born. With the phone.
With the midwife on the phone?
Yes, with the midwife on the phone. She's like, what? Yeah. And my husband's like, we tried to tell you. We tried to tell you that.
I hope she learned the lesson after that. Like, stop questioning women.
Yes. And that's what was most stressful is now I have to drive. She kept saying, if you get here and you're not in active labor, you got to go back home. And that would have been a 15-minute ride back. So that like really disheartened me and just kind of heightened my already, like you said, intensity. Because I thought, I don't want to drive 50 minutes and then turn back around So we kind of stalled a little bit longer. And finally my husband's like, let's go. He took charge. Like, nobody's
good.
Yes, he was like, let's go. If you get there and you're not in active labor, he was like, we'll get a hotel somewhere like close by to the birthing center. Sure enough, I wasn't. I completed transition. I was on the way there, just keeping baby girl inside of me so that she wouldn't fall out. So,
oh my goodness.
So after that baby, when we got pregnant again, probably before we got pregnant, I was like, our next baby's going to be a home birth. Like, I had started doing research, and then second baby was a home birth. And then this most recent baby was, like, I would say, as, undisturbed completely, because the midwife, my second baby, home birth, I had him in the shower, so somebody had to catch him, because like it's a hard surface.
So how is that experience with the second baby and having midwife like support throughout the pregnancy? Because with your first, you transferred care to your midwife later in the pregnancy, right?
Yes, it was like 35 weeks, I think.
Yeah. So how was your experience with the second pregnancy and birth with the midwife supporting throughout?
So the second pregnancy midwife support was amazing. Like,
awesome.
They were amazing midwives. They were, she had, her midwifery was out of her home office. So it was like the back, it was very down to earth. It was as I guess, not intrusive as you could hope for. So I was blessed with my second baby too, because I hear horror stories about home births and midwives that are still kind of, they call them medwives because they're
medwives.
Still,
I had one.
Yeah, so they're still kind of in their mind have this medical mentality, but no, they were amazing and very down to earth. And like, I could turn down certain tests, not like with the hospital system. They're like, oh no, you're gonna get a glucose, you're gonna get an ultrasound, you're gonna get this. I declined. I interviewed midwives in the area and I asked, I don't want an ultrasound because 9 times out of 10 they're flawed. So I don't want you telling me at like 20 weeks, oh, your baby looks like they could have this or they could have that, when a lot of times they're guessing. They're guessing the weight, they're guessing the size, they're guessing the size of, the brain and this and that. And I said to her, I'm not, even if something is wrong, I'm not going to have an abortion. So there's no point in me having an ultrasound. We're going to just roll with the punches. However, God, so, and she was fine with that. So that was great. And then when I finally came to the point of having him, I didn't want any cervical exams. I didn't want continuous fetal monitoring. I didn't want any of that. Like, and they were fine with that. We were just every hour, because my water had broke with my second before. Like, my water broke at about 2 p.m. and I didn't have him until 8:15 the next morning. And now, if I had been in the hospital, they would have been, oh my gosh, you need to have this baby. We're going to have to induce.
Past 24 hours.
Yes, we're going to have a C-section, blah, 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 blah. And they were like, no, as long as your discharge when your water broke was, clean and not smelling funky, and you can feel the baby moving, you're good. So they just like every hour or so, she'd say, okay, lay down and let me hear the baby. Let's just make sure that baby's heartbeat is good. We did. And then at about, I say that I stalled my second labor because my first was 4-hour labor. I'm going to labor at 6 p.m. At 10:04, I think, or 05, 10:01, she was born. With my second, my water broke at 2:15, and I didn't have him until 8:15 in the morning. And I strongly believe that it was because I stalled the labor until I could confirm childcare for my oldest.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
Because it was overnight. My parents were supposed to be in town for this labor, but he came at about 37 weeks. So they weren't planning on being there. So I had nobody. And I was anxious. I'm going to be honest. I was a little bit anxious subconsciously.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if my daughter, who at the time was 2, wakes up and like, we don't, in the heat of it. So I was anxious about it subconsciously. At 8:00 in the morning, a girlfriend of mine picks up the phone. I had been blowing her up from like 7 a.m. to about 8:00. She picks up the phone and she's like, hey, what's up? I'm like, I am in labor. Do you think you can come? Like we had previously discussed, to watch the baby. She says, I'm on my way. Tiffany, 15 minutes later, I went from 0 to 100 and had the baby.
Yeah, that's
from
awesome.
0 to 100. I remember I handed my husband my phone. I said, Tremaine was the girlfriend. I said, Tremaine's on her way. I went into the shower. I got on all fours, turned on the hot water, and just like went into the zone. My cervix is blossoming like a flower. I'm writing this, like I'm all the mantras. 8:15. 15 minutes later.
Oh my goodness. I love that.
So
that's such a real thing though. I've seen it happen plenty of times where if there's something and like mom is like forced to be in her logical brain because of like, other children that they have or whatever the case may be, husband's not there yet. It's so true. Like your body will close up because it doesn't feel like it's the right time, doesn't feel safe, all of that. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So after the fact, I said I was stalling labor. I didn't know it at the time, but I 100% was stalling labor. And he's
Girl,
like,
I did that with my daughter because I didn't want her to be born on Halloween.
Oh, that is such a good reason to stall labor.
I was laboring all night, and then she came at 2:00 in the morning, November 1st.
That is such
I was
a
like,
good
she
reason.
will not be born on Halloween.
100% agree. I would have stalled labor too.
Yeah,
and
our bodies are so powerful.
Right. Thinking of that, my second, the one that I said came early, he was born on October 22nd. I think his due date, if I remember right, was like the beginning of November. So if it had gotten close to Halloween, I would have done the same thing. Like, nope.
Exactly.
So that was the second. Go ahead.
And so everything was good after baby was born, like when it came to just like immediate post-birth, like placenta, birthing and all of that, everything's smooth sailing.
So I had him in the shower. So, the midwife caught him and had to like help me get over to the bed and then birth the placenta and all that other good stuff. But placenta came out like shortly thereafter, maybe 30 minutes or so, or less. And my husband cut the umbilical cord. Now that you mentioned that, with my first at the birthing center, the placenta didn't come out right away. And I didn't know any better then. And they gave me Pitocin at the birthing center. Yeah. To get but I didn't know any better. I didn't know. Now I would turn down everything. But they just came over and said, hey, you haven't birthed the placenta yet. I don't even know how much time had passed. So we're going to give you Pitocin to like speed that up. And I was like, okay.
Oh yeah, no, it's like no consent. It's just like, boom. It's so common.
Right. It's not like she said, these are the side effects. We're just going to give you Pitocin. And I just had a baby. I'm like, okay. Like,
You're like, yeah, whatever.
yeah,
Like in like a whole
exactly.
nother world.
Yes. I'm like, okay, sure. So I do remember with the first, they did that. With the second, placenta came out shortly thereafter. No big deal. The two midwives stayed, I think they were there till about 11 a.m. or noon. At that point, I've been up all night. So, taking little cat naps. So I'm like, eyes are starting to close. I'm like, I'm ready for y'all to go. I'm so tired. Like it
Right?
finally, yeah, it finally like hits you. Like once the adrenaline all wears off, you're like, okay. Um,
Yeah. Time
so
for
that was
sleep.
time for sleep. Thankfully, I took the midwife's advice very seriously. And I didn't take the stairs. I didn't do any heavy lifting. They didn't even stitch me. She's like, I really recommend, you have a small tear. I really recommend letting your body heal naturally. Don't sit Indian style. Don't
Oh,
take
that's
stairs.
awesome.
And when she first said that, I thought, she is crazy. Like, what? But I took her advice because with my first, they stitched me and I had all kinds of I don't want to say healing issues, but like they didn't stitch me properly. So
Mm-hmm.
the end wouldn't heal because it had like nothing to hold on to because they didn't line it up well. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to listen to maybe I'll try this route. So I tried that. I healed beautifully, no issues. The woman's body is amazing.
It totally is. Like the whole getting sutures, getting stitched after, it's all a scam. Our bodies are
Yeah.
like literally designed for this. Like it heals better when you leave it.
Yes, it did. It healed so much better. I would have never, but I didn't know that going into birth. That's something I researched.
Oh,
I
because
didn't
no
think
one
like,
tells us.
right. But now I'm like oh God, I want everybody to have a autonomous sovereign birth because
Me too.
you see these videos of people at the hospitals and the baby's getting rubbed down and the mom with her legs up in the air and they're screaming at her to push and I'm just like
Oh, yeah.
horrified.
Or
It's
not to
all,
push if the doctor's
or
not in the
not to
room yet.
push.
It's
Right.
insane.
Like so yeah, with all three, I did not push until like the head had been born. Like once that
Mm.
head was born, then I actually pushed with the next contraction the body. So like all three babies were like a one push and then one and done push once it was time to push. So I can't even imagine being at the hospital with the nurses yelling, push, push.
No, it's so not fair.
Right. So thankfully with this midwife too, so then we fast forward to my third, I get pregnant. It was really I live in Kentucky and home births didn't become legal I think until 2018 or so. So I had a really hard time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very recently. I had a very hard time finding a midwife. I remember saying to my husband, maybe it's not a thing here. Maybe like you can't do that. Finally, I found her and she told me, it just became legal. We've been kind of like all the midwives have been kind of underground.
Underground, yeah.
Yeah, so it was hard for me to find stuff on the internet. Matter of fact, I found her on Instagram. Like another midwifery, Indie Birth, had posted her she had assisted with a birth. And so that's how I found her. I didn't even find her on the internet, like with a Google search. And I interviewed with her. I asked her if she did breech birth because after my first, both of my babies were born normally, but I found out that, some midwives don't do breech birth. So you could end up getting transferred to the hospital just because your midwife won't do a breech birth. And she said, I do breech birth. I do twins if that's, if you end up having twins. And so I'm like, she's perfect.
That's yeah, hard to find.
Right, right. So with baby three, after I interviewed with her and we had all of our maternal, like you said, maternal care previously, the visits and whatnot, I went into labor at 39 weeks one day. And my mucus show was what first went at about 9:30 at night. And I didn't tell my husband. My mother-in-law was here at the time because she was going to assist with the baby. I didn't tell either of them at 9:30, but I texted the midwife and the photographer, and I was like, look, I think that I'm going to go into labor tonight. I just lost my mucus show. My bloody show, or I will keep y'all posted. And I sat down on the couch with my husband and my mother-in-law after putting our kids down. We watched a movie, and like 11:30 p.m., I went upstairs and I like snuggled and laid with my other two kids for the last time, not for the last time forever, but for the last time for at least like 6 to 8 weeks, because they would tell me don't take the stairs. I went upstairs, I snuggled with them for about an hour, and then I got up at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I came back downstairs and said to my husband, definitely going into labor, within the next, I'm in labor. We're definitely going to have the baby within the next 24 hours. I laid down in our bed for about 30 minutes, and the surges were already like picking up. So I couldn't actually go back to sleep. And so I told him, I'm jumping in the bath to labor. You don't have to do anything. Just like, I just want to, let you know, like, and that was at 1:20, 25 or so. I started timing the surges at that point. And I reached out again to the midwife and the photographer. And I was like, look, I've timed the surges from 1:30 to like 2:15. These are the surges. And they were both like, we're on our way. And this was about 2:15. I kept laboring in the bathtub by myself. I was listening to hypnobirthing and the whole rainbow relaxation, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, the rainbow relaxation audio.
At one
I love
point,
that.
I know. At one point, the surges got intense to the point, though, where I was like, okay, this lady's getting on my nerves. So then I switched to worship music.
I love worship music in birth.
Yes. So then I switched to worship music, and I started like worshiping in between the surges and like, praying for a supernatural birth. And the midwives arrived around like 4:15, I think. I crawled out of the bathtub. At that point, I was to the point where, where you feel like you need to crawl up a hole because you just don't know what to do with yourself. So I crawled out of the bathtub, and I'm like hunched over on all fours on the floor of my bathroom, and the midwife and the assistant, like they peek in and their energy was so amazing, because like their number one priority was just not disturbing me. So they peek into the door, and I look at them, and I remember saying to them, I feel like I need to throw up, but I can't. Like I feel it, but it's not. And all they did, Tiffany, was nod. They didn't even say anything. They just
I love that.
They were just like, okay, like, but nothing came out of their mouth. And then finally, like, I don't know, 5 minutes later or something, I vomit. And I had already planned. I knew, like, I had that feeling. So I had getting into the tub, I had grabbed a vase that was by the floor of the tub. So then I vomit, and my silly behind motions to clean up the vomit out of the vase. So the assistant like comes over and like grabs the vase, and I'm like, I'm sorry, and then they're still not saying anything. She just grabs the vase, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like it didn't seem right to just leave my vomit vase right there on the floor. And then I crawl into the shower, and then I do the final, like, going into completing transition. I'm in there for about 30 minutes, like moaning and groaning and just like surrendering, loosening up. I remember I was talking to the baby, saying, let's bring it home. I kept repeating that. Let's bring it home. Let's bring it home. Let's bring it home. And with my second, I didn't get out of the shower with enough time. So with the third, I was like, okay, I think it's time. Let me get out because I don't want to deliver the baby in the shower again. So I crawl into bed and completed the last like 15 minutes from, completing transition to baby is in the birth path. We're doing this. Midwives are hiding out in the corners of the room. Like they're out of my field of sight, except for the one that recorded. I'm so happy she recorded. And then my husband was to my right in the corner of the room. The main midwife was to my left in the other corner, both out of my field of vision. So it was completely uninterrupted, undisturbed. I'm like, you saw the video. I'm just like, oh God, it's just, I'm just moaning through the entire thing. Minimal. I'm saying minimal. They're not saying anything. It's just quiet, dim light. I remember that after I completed crowning, I remember saying, praise Jesus. I was like, oh, this is the hardest part. Like we've completed the hardest transition, crowning. The next is like, it's downhill from here. So I remember saying, praise Jesus. And then baby coming, like the next surge, giving a little push, and he was born. I was in another world. Like, so there was like so there was like this lag from the time the baby, it was probably like 30 seconds because I went and scrubbed the video and I'm like, well, how long was it? I think it was like 30 seconds. But in that time when I was like coming back to my body, so to speak, or, coming back to reality, like you said earlier, my logical brain to kick back in, I remember saying, I'm so sorry, baby. There's a second part to that video. I'm like, I'm so sorry that, you laid there for 30 seconds while I like gathered myself, that maternal pause. And yeah, even at that point, they had not come around. I picked him up. I put him on my chest. I'm talking to him for a few minutes and they're still in hiding until they confirm like she's 100% back earthside, so to speak. And then we start cracking jokes. Then I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was having a horse. It was wild. And then the atmosphere changes to a lighter atmosphere once they know that I can converse with them. So,
but that was incredible, like watching that part. And that's why I thought it was a complete free birth with no one present, because no one interrupted that moment. And like, I remember reading in the comments and people were even saying like, wow, like kudos to whoever was attending that birth, because so many people would have let their fear take over and stepped in and made it about their fear instead of letting it just happen, and letting mom lead the whole experience. So that was beautiful. I really kudos to that midwife, because that's unheard of, in that world for 30 seconds, because 30 seconds feels like so much longer in those moments.
Right. That's why when after I said, I scrubbed the video because it felt like for me, it felt like an eternity. Like the next clip, I'm literally saying to my baby boy, I'm like, I'm so sorry there was a delay in picking you up. I'm so sorry. But like, oh, it's just 30 seconds. He gets in. He understood that we were like trying to still gather ourselves and our composure.
He's like, Mama, you just did a lot. It's okay.
Right. But this midwife, Dr. Cohen, she is amazing. Like I would recommend her over and over and over again, because like you said, so many people would have stepped in and interrupted the physiological birth. And I had no idea that's how it was going to go down either. Like, so I was also processing like, okay, this is all me right now. Like there's nobody telling you push, nobody, telling you to readjust, lean back, nothing. This was all this is all you. You're going to have to bring this one home, girlfriend. You bring this home with the baby because, you know, they're not going to disturb you. And it was amazing. Like if I could recommend to any other mom, like, you know, we said earlier, just trust yourself and like do it outside of the system.
Yeah, for sure. Like we have the blueprint, you know. It's our God-given gift to experience this, and yeah, it's really nothing to be feared.
Right.
It's just so, yeah, it's so beautiful to be able to experience that though, because I feel like it really sets the foundation for motherhood, you know, when you have that like internal compass, that intuition, that connection to God, that you carry that into motherhood and it shows. It really does. You're
And
not
the
outsourcing.
right, right. And so many people don't realize that the hospital system thrives on the fear. And the
Hmm.
fear makes birth painful,
Oh
you
yeah.
know? And people don't know that. Like I have a girlfriend that's like, she said, "Oh, you're such a gangster." Literally, she said, "You're such a gangster for having, you know, babies outside of the hospital unmedicated." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. Boo, you can do this too. You just like first you have to break up with the fear that the hospital system is pushing."
You are such a
Yeah.
gangster though,
No.
because you did that.
But
But no, I agree
you
a
know what I'm
hundred
saying?
percent.
Right. Like anybody, we all have that ability. We
Yes.
need to break up with the fear mongering hospital system.
Yeah. Yeah, it's women. Like women literally have this ability and it's like incredible.
Right.
And it's literally all like living within us. You just have to choose that over the path of fear, you know? Like not one woman is more special than the other. It's just what
Exactly.
are you choosing to tap into? Like, are you gonna let the fear take over, or are you going to have faith that God's design is pretty perfect? And,
Right.
you know, and that's not to say that things don't happen, but I really like so deeply feel like God will guide you. Like if there is an emergency, because I feel like that's the biggest hang up for so many people is
Yes.
what if something happens? What if there's an emergency? If you have that connection to God and you have that communication and you go to him and you ask him, he is going to guide you. And that I fully believe in, you know. We birth is not a medical emergency, you know,
Right.
until it is. And
Until
then
it is.
and those are, you know, very rare situations.
Right. Right. And but so many people too don't even realize that putting themselves in that hospital environment increases your interventions.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
because, you know, everything now becomes a, oh, like we said earlier, oh, you've been in labor too long. Oh, you know, you're not progressing, which is total BS. The whole you're not
Mm-hmm.
progressing because you can go from 0 to 130 in like 5 minutes, you know,
Literally. Mm-hmm.
literally. Like so, they're afraid, and so, like you said, what if something happens? But you're putting yourself in that system, which is more likely that something is going to happen because they're like itching to jump in.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, wow. So how is your postpartum after this baby? I mean, you're still very freshly postpartum. So
I
thank you for
know.
coming on so
Oh no.
soon after having a baby. How many months old is your baby boy?
So he will be 11 weeks tomorrow. So what is that? 2.5 months,
Oh
two
my
months and like
goodness.
a week or two. He's growing amazingly. He's, you know, we're
Oh,
breastfeeding. He weighed in like 14 pounds, 6 ounces last week. So he's a
oh,
little chunky, a little chunk, like we call him.
good. Well fed.
Yes, very well fed. I had my, you know, my postpartum visits at home, which is so nice about having a home birth. Like you're here. You gave birth. You just lay down in your bed and you don't have to go
Yeah.
home. And the midwife comes and checks on you at home, you know, for 6 weeks. Um, yeah, it's actually kind of sad when you have that last midwife visit. You're like, oh, we're breaking up. Like, what am I going to see? I'm not going to see you
I
again.
feel that way with my doula clients all the time. I'm like, we're gonna stay friends, right?
Right. Like, it's such an intense part of life. You build a relationship. It's,
Yeah,
it's not like transactional, like in the medical system where it's just,
exactly.
all right, see you later. So
Yep.
yeah, this third baby solidified for me that I wanted to get into birth work. I had been thinking about it for a while, and this was like, yeah, this is what you're gonna do. Like, you
I
need to do that.
love that for you so much. Yeah, I can't wait to see what God does in your life because, yeah, especially after experiencing the beautiful births that you did, so sovereign, so in your power, so connected to God. Like, from the beginning, like you really have so much wisdom to offer women. And yeah, I'm really excited for you.
Thank you. So yeah, that's where we are now. So I definitely
Yay.
feel like I definitely feel like with you build connections in the field. And so you're in the field. So I know, like, you start, oh, you're in New York. So if I talk to somebody that's in New York, I'm like, hey, and I've actually heard that there's not that many midwives in New York. So
There
you're
are
like right.
not. There are not, especially where I live up in the Hudson Valley. It is like insane how many women are being forced to go to birth centers and hospitals because of the lack of midwifery care here. And the few that do exist are like very medically trained.
Right.
So who knows? We'll see what God has in the cards for me. I don't know if I'll go down the midwifery path or not, but we'll see. We'll see.
Because you're a doula now, right? But you're just not sure if you'll
If I want to like take the full step to
the
be a
full step.
midwife. Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like it's so it I think I would maybe want to support women a little more hands off, like, supporting women who are wanting to free birth and birth unassisted and things like that, like totally out of the system. Um, but honestly, it's so hard to even find women who want that.
I
So
know.
I'm in that
Yeah.
kind of place right now where I'm like, maybe like authentic midwifery um would be something more aligned, but we'll have to see. If
Yes.
if
Well, I'm
God really
excited.
if God really pulls me to that, then
Right. Right.
uh that would be awesome. I love birth. I love that your beautiful births led you to wanting to support women in birth
Yeah.
too. That's how you can tell you had a really awesome birth, when you're like wanting to just shout it from the rooftops.
Not enough, like you said just now, not enough people want it because I just think people don't know, like, you could have a transformative, supernatural birth experience.
It's the
And
fear though, you
right,
really have to break through the fear. The fear just completely takes over.
right. And I need more, I want more people to know that they can have that. They can have this, like, outer body, supernatural birth. So
Oh, well, thank you so much for
thank
sharing these incredible stories. I am so excited for everyone to hear it.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited to see where your journey goes and keeping in touch
Oh,
along the
yeah,
way.
for sure, girl. We will be keeping in touch, of
All right.
course.
Take
Enjoy the
care.
rest of your night. Thank you
You too.
again.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye bye. Hi, friends. Thank you so much for listening. And if you are enjoying what you're listening to, please take a second and give me a 5-star review. It helps these episodes get seen by more women who need to hear these incredible, important stories of sovereign birth. Thank you again.